The Moon, Earth's own natural satellite. It has captured the interest of mankind since the dawn of consciousness. From the notion that it was a god, to the idea that it was once covered in lush vegetation, and to how we view it today, as a barren and desolate wasteland. The moon has been wrapped up into the mythology of many ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Hindus. But perhaps the most influential were the Greeks. Artemis was the Greek goddess of the moon, and her brother, Apollo, was the namesake of NASA's famous Apollo missions. It all started with the then unnamed Apollo 1, and 3 astronauts, Virgil Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee. Apollo 1 was scheduled to launch on February 21st, 1967, but it never did. On January 27th, during a pre-flight test, many issues arose, leading to a grave disaster. It started at 1 p.m. as soon as they stepped into the spacecraft. Grissom immediately noticed a strange odor in the oxygen, but nothing of great significance was found. The next issue was a higher oxygen flow than usual. They discussed the issue with ground control, but it was never resolved. Communications were down between the control room and the astronauts. The countdown was put on hold until further notice. Not long after, the astronauts started smelling fire. Black smoke billowed out of the spacecraft as firemen and doctors arrived at the scene, but it was too late. The 3 men had lost their lives. The source of the fire was a bundle of wires, invisible to the astronaut in the first vital seconds. It was this fire that led them to name the missions after Apollo, the Greek god of fire. This disaster caused the rest of the program to be suspended for nearly a year's time. But after that year, things started to look a lot more optimistic. December 21st, 1968, the day of the Apollo 8's successful launch. Manned by astronauts Frank Borman, William Anders, and James A. Lovell, this was the first human journey to the moon. It also featured the first live TV coverage of the moon's surface and the first pictures of Earth from space taken by the astronauts. While this was the first major success in the Apollo project, there was still a ways to go. Flash forward to May 18, 1969, the launch of the Apollo 10 spacecraft. This launch is often forgot about as it was quickly tossed in the shadow of its much more famous counterpart, Apollo 11. But Apollo 10 was crucial in getting humans on the moon. The purpose of Apollo 10 was to stage a moon landing without actually landing on the moon. This provided valuable information and practice for the main launch. July 16, 1969, a monumentally important date, the date of the Apollo 11 launch, a date that many will remember for years and years to come. Some of you might have even watched live as Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon for the first time 4 days after its launch. This was the first time anyone had ever set foot on another planetary body.
At the foot of the ladder, the lamb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Spending nearly a whole day on the surface, the astronauts departed, and thus the Apollo 11 mission had completed its goal, which, stated simply, was to perform a manned lunar landing and return. NASA didn't stop there, though. There was still so much more to be done. Following Apollo 11's success, Apollo 12 had 3 more astronauts landing on the moon. Apollo 13, on the other hand, didn't have the same luck. An explosion on board caused an emergency landing, and all 3 astronauts returned home safely. Thankfully, Apollo 14 through 17 all landed on the moon successfully and provided us with more information about the moon than we could have ever imagined. Hopefully, the moon is just our first stop on human exploration in space.